Alright, this is going to be a demonstration of the Radionics D6112 alarm panel along with the D620 keypad. I'm going to show its basic functions, kind of how it works, what it has. Then I'll show programming with the 5200 programmer, and then I'll show how status reports work and it reporting to the 6600 receiver behind me. So first off, this is a relatively simple Radionics system. It was one of Radionics' smaller models that were meant for home or small business residential applications. So this panel only has 8 zones on board. It has up to 2 partitions, and this is the D620 command center, which is an LED keypad. You could have alternatively had the D636 command center, which is an LCD keypad. I haven't programmed this one yet because you actually have to program the zone text into the keypad, because I'm assuming this was added on later, but I have to download the handler from my server for this still, so that's why I'm not using it at the moment, but it does support that. The D620 is the most common command center for these panels. If you ever see a Radionics system that was installed in the home that had an LED keypad, it was probably one of these 6112s. They were common for that. So you have A, B, and C keys here, along with Enter. You have numerical and command keys. You have the armed status LEDs, so perimeter indicates the perimeter zones are armed, interior indicates the interior zones are armed, and instant indicates that the perimeter zones are armed but will not have an entry delay. So here you have the zone status for zones 1 through 8. So if I close this, we'll see zone 3, which is the one it's on. The red LED comes on. Fast flash indicates that that zone had an alarm on it. Slow flash indicates it's bypassed or force armed. The AC LED just indicates that it has power. It's on when it's normal, and it flashes when it's running on battery only. The command LED lights up whenever you are in command mode. So that lights up, and once you've executed a command, it'll go out. So on this panel, it also has, did I just miss that 4? Oh, it just took a moment. Okay. This panel also has several outputs. It has the bell output, and it has the auxiliary relay output. I might need to put a D136 in one of those sockets for that to work, but it does actually have that option to have a Form C contact if you wanted. In terms of zones, you have the 8 zones here, which are labeled A through H. You'll see why in programming. The first 2 are 2-wire zones, so the first one is for glass breaks. There are 2-wire glass breaks, which is an interesting thing off the show at some point. The second one is just for a smoke detector. Has their own different end-of-line values. The last 6 are standard, non-powered 1 kilo ohm loops like most Radionics panels have. So, as I said, these keys can be programmed for different functions. The Enter key is pressed after entering a passcode. And yeah, to arm this system, we will do a perimeter, interior, and instant arms. So those kind of correspond to up here. So command 1 arms all zones, whether perimeter or the interior zones. Command 2 arms just the perimeter, but with no entry delay, so that's why it says instant. Command 3 is the same as command 2, except there is an entry delay. Command 8 is interesting, which I'll show that one at the end here. That one basically automatically bypasses any faulted zones and then arms perimeter. So if I do command 1, we're going to arm all. These LEDs are going to flash until the exit delay expires, which is set to 10 seconds right now, so it's not very long. Now you'll notice that the perimeter is armed, the interior is armed. It is not in instant mode. To disarm, we'll just enter our passcode. For command 2, you'll notice that it skips the exit delay entirely. Interior or instant is on and perimeter is on, indicating it's just perimeter zones armed, and it is instant. So if I trip this zone, it's going to go into alarm. You hear the alarm relay clicks. It already picked up the phone line, so you didn't hear that click. Fast flashing on zone 3 LED, indicating it's in alarm. So disarm it. And that remains, but these lights have went out. So to reset that, you do command 47, which is the same command that you use to reset smoke detectors. So now we can do command 3, which is a perimeter delayed. So wait for the exit delay, then I'll show you the entry delay tone. Something you'll notice about this keypad is during the entry delay and really trouble conditions, any longer tones, the buzzer sounds modulated. That is normal. If you ever get one of these panels, that's how it's supposed to sound. They just do that. So I'll trip this. That's the entry delay tone. Do that to disarm, and we're back to normal. Now, if zone 3 is faulted and I do command 8, you'll see it automatically bypasses zone 3 and arms perimeter. And to bypass a zone regularly, if I did command 1, I can do command 0, 3, enter, and that bypasses zone 3. So that's how bypassing works, and partial arming. I just missed my passcode there. So that's how that works. Watch mode is like chime, so if I do command 6, that enables it. If this zone is faulted, since it's a perimeter zone, keypad beeps, kind of like a door chime. You do command 6 again to disable that. Command 7 and command 9 are panic activations, so command 7 is set up for a silent alarm, so nothing is displayed. Command 9, however, you heard the relay click, sets off the system, so hear the relay click again, bell is back off. So these 3 keys, as I said, are programmable, so I won't be able to show those yet. I guess I can show the fire alarm activation. So for fire alarms, how this panel really doesn't have fire zones, but what you do is you program a zone to have a pulsed bell output. So if I trip my fire zone here, which is that one, here the relay is clicking on and off. Zone 2 is an alarm. So fire zones are active with a pulsed bell. You can also clear it by doing that. So zone 2, it's still reporting to the receiver. We can do command 47, reset. And yeah, that's about all the keypad operations. So now I'm going to show programming. So I'll have to move stuff a little bit here. I'm going to, yes, there is supposed to be a cabinet for this thing, but I don't actually have one. So it's just the board and the keypad here. So to program this thing, you can use the 5100 programmer or the 5200 programmer. I'm going to be showing the 5200. I don't mind the leaf blower in the background. There's yard work being done. Move this over here. So this is the Radionics 5200 programmer. It's used to program most of their systems. I did a separate video on this. I'll have to do a better one at some point. So this programmer plugs into the jack right down here on the board. One up here is telco. That one's for programmer. Don't get them mixed up. And we'll turn the programmer on. Wait for it to power on. Enter my password. Enter. And we'll go to the 6112 handler, which is right there. And we're going to press read on new record to receive the copy of the panel programming, but first we have to reset it. So this panels, you can't actually program with the programmer while they're in operation. So the best way to do this is there's this little reset pin down here. What you want to do is short that to any ground. Conveniently, there's a chassis ground right there, so you can just touch a screwdriver between them. Now the panel will be in sync with the programmer, and we can receive the panel programming. Okay, now I'm just going to go menu by menu, and this is a lot, so get ready for a long time of programming descriptions here. So first off, we have the globals menu. I'm actually going to plug this in. Okay, so globals is kind of panel-wide configuration, so we're going to do enter group. And these are report codes, so trouble is F, restore is E, opening is B, closing is C. These are standard Radionics reporting codes, but if you had this panel reporting to a non-Radionics receiver, you might need to reprogram these to be different. So that's where you can set those. And duress, which that's the one thing I didn't show on the keypad. To activate a duress signal, which is basically a silent alarm or a hold-up alarm, you add 1 to the last digit of your passcode. So if my passcode was 1234, my passcode for duress would be 1235. And that disarms the panel as normal, but it also will send a silent alarm to the central station where they can dispatch police. So if you're being held at gunpoint or something, you can disarm the panel but still send an alarm without showing any indication. Now, if your passcode was 1239, your passcode would be 1230 for duress, because it rolls over just the last digit. It does not increment the third digit when you add that. So that's the code it reports to the receiver for a duress alarm. In my case, I have it set up for 9. Battery supervision code is also 9, because duress alarm is alarm zone 9, battery supervision is trouble and restore zone 9, so you can actually tell it apart. Bell time, that's the timeout for the bell, so if the alarm is sounding, after that amount of time, assuming it's not overridden, which you'll see, that would time out after a certain amount of time. The panel automatically silences itself. Buzz on phone fail. So if a phone line fails and it can't get through to the central station, you can have it beep at the keypad. You can turn that off if you wanted. Buzz AC failure. So during an AC failure condition, keypad buzzes. You can disable that. On mine, I have it disabled. DTMF, that sets whether or not you want the keypad to dial in touch tone, or if you want it to dial using pulse. I have it set to yes, so it'll dial in touch tone. Passcode is 9999. These panels are remotely programmable using RAM 2, which I do have that, and I'll be doing a whole separate video on that at some point. So that passcode is used so that unauthorized people can't just dial in and program the panel. So you have to match the passcode between RAM 2 and the panel. Answer armed and answer disarmed. You can set that ring count differently, so that's how many rings it'll answer after, based on if it's armed or disarmed. So I guess the main purpose of that is if you wanted to be able to tell if the system was armed remotely, you could set the answer arm to like 4 and answer disarm to 2. Then if you call the phone line that the panel is on, if it answers after 2 rings, you would know which armed state it's in, if it's armed or disarmed. Now, auxiliary relay time, that's the number of seconds that auxiliary relay over there activates for. So for mine, it's set to 2. It's in increments of 2. And we're back to reporting codes. So now the next section is the primary phone configuration. So prefix, this field down here is not super long, so if you wanted to add an area code or other prefixes for exiting a PBX or something, you can put that in the prefix field. But otherwise, that's the phone number it dials to reach the receiver. That's not a PSTN number, so don't call it. It's just on our local network here. So 884-2000, it calls to reach the receiver. Modem is yes. That selects if the panel is going to be using modem format or not. If it's yes, it uses modem. If it's no, it'll use the format you select here, which in the program entry guide it lists them right there. So BFSK is BFSK. 5 is also known as Radionics Super Fast. That's 3+1 extended, 40 pulses a second with a checksum. 4 is Ademco High Speed. That is 3+1, and it is at 20 pulses a second because it's high speed. 3 is 4+2, or also known as Silent Night, at 20 pulses a second. 2 and 1 match 4 and 3, but they are at 10 pulses a second instead of 20. And blank entry for Seskoa, that is 3+1, non-expanded, it's double round, and it does not send hex digits. So that's for very old Seskoa receivers. That's where you set the format. So ACK 14 is whether or not it responds to the 1400 Hertz acknowledgement tone that the receiver sends. If you're using modem format, you set that to no. Expanded treble and restore. So if you have that set to yes, this panel does send the zone number along with a treble or restore report. So if you have that set to no, older receivers might not support it. It would just send a treble report. It wouldn't show that it's a treble on zone 2. So ACK 23 is the same as ACK 14, except it's for 2300 Hertz. Also set to no because we're using modem format. And we're back up to the stop. So alt phone is there. So this is all the same as primary phone, except you can set the routes in here. So this is for different event types. You can set what central station numbers it goes to. So 0 is primary only, 1 is primary then alternate, 2 is alternate then primary, 3 is primary not designated, alternate designated. Designated zones in this panel are kind of complicated. You can set certain zones to report to certain central station numbers. So anywhere that I mention the designated zones as the complicated feature, that's what that's for. I'm not going to go in depth and explain that here. So that's reset all that, all the different event types. And now devices. So this is a device on address 1. You need to tell the panel that. So device on address 1 is model 2, which a 2 corresponds to the D620 command center. And for each command center, you can disable the command key. So if you had one in a location that was more accessible to the public, I guess, and you wanted to restrict it to only be able to arm and disarm the panel by entering your code and then enter, no special functions, you can disable the command key on this. That's what that is for. And set if it's active for account number 1. And you set the next address and go on. So command keys, that sets the A, B, and C keys down here. So combination 9, that is interesting. If you wanted to passcode protect the command key and these special keys down here, you can make it so that you have to enter a special passcode sequence to enable that key. Instead of doing command 1, you would enter the combination 9 code, which starts with 9. So let's say 999. You would enter 999, enter command 1. So you could passcode protect that. Otherwise, you could just do it without a passcode. And this just enables and disables all the different commands. So command 1 is all on, command 2 is perimeter instant, 3 is perimeter delayed. Force arm 1, 2, 3, that enables force arming for these 3 different commands. So if you had that to no, it would not force arm by doing command 1. Command 0, that's bypass. Force arm max, so you can set a maximum number of zones that can be bypassed or force armed when arming. So I have that set to 8, so all 8 zones could be bypassed. Command 8 enables the command 8, the partial arming feature, and you get the idea. Now, command 47 short, if you set that to yes, it does a 2-second sensor reset time. If it is set to no, it does 4 seconds. So if your smoke detectors take longer to reset, you can set that to no. And command 5, command 7 report code. So command 7 and 9 were panics. You can set whether or not each one activates the bell, which reporting code it sends, and whether or not the bell is pulsed if you want it to be a fire panic, whether or not it activates the auxiliary relay, and whether or not it's a designated zone. So match all that for command 9. I think that's all. Oh yeah, A, B, and C keys. So you can set what function those do. Find that. Where is that? It's further in the manual here. There's a list of all the different functions. There it is. So there's all the different functions you can set it up for. Mine, A, B, and C in order are set for 1, 2, and 5. So a test report, status report, and sensor reset. But those are configurable. And back to start. So exit group. Combinations. So a combination is your passcode. And combinations start with their number. So combination number 1 is always going to start with 1. Then you just enter the last digits. Combination number is also the number it sends to the receiver if it's sending an expanded report like that. So there's the rest of the digits. Override, that overrides opening and closing restrictions, which you'll see what that is in a little bit, and whether or not it's active for account 1 and account 2. As I said, it's a 2-partition panel. So now we're going to configure account number 1. There's the account number, 0015, so you'll see that show up on the receiver when it reports. Off, what that does is it completely disables that account, so no panel operations can take place. I would assume that that is for if your customer isn't paying their bill, you can completely disable their system remotely using RAM 2, but you can also set it and reset it with the 5200. Local, that disables all reporting for that account, so if the system wasn't going to report to a central station, you could just turn on the local option. Delay in is your, what is that? I'm trying to remember which one's which. In is your entry delay time, out is your exit delay time. They are in 10-second increments. Pre-warn, that can disable the entry delay tone, so if you didn't want it to have an entry delay tone, you set that to no. Opening and closing, that enables opening and closing reports for the account. Restrict openings, so remember how I was talking about opening and closing restrictions? If you enable restrict openings, it will not send an opening report unless it is an opening after alarm. And restrict closing, it will not send a closing report unless it is closing with zones bypassed or force armed. So that's a thing. Combination ID, I was talking about that a little bit earlier, sends the combination ID to the receiver so that you can tell who armed the system. If you're reporting to a non-Radionics receiver, it doesn't support it, you set that to no. Cancel reports, so a cancel report is sent if you disarm the system like right away before the bell time expires. That was usually indicating to the central station that they can cancel dispatch, but not every central station will cancel dispatch on a cancel report. So we'll just have to ask them whether or not a cancel report is even, how those are handled. But you can enable or disable it. Duress reports, enable or disable it. Delay restorals. If you wanted to delay restoral reports until the bell time expires, you can set that to yes. And ring 1, I'm forgetting the specifics. What does ring 1 do? Ring 1 restricts it for non-fire zones. So again, this doesn't really have fire zones. So when you configure the zone, you would set it to override this, but it will prevent a single zone from activating the alarm more than once in an arming period. So that's to prevent the system from constantly going off if there's a faulty zone. So, but again, you can set zones to override that. Test bell. So if you set that to yes, it does a bell test after the exit delay expires. And show, what that does is if you wanted to disable the zone status display while the system is armed, you can set that to no. Now that would be so that you can restrict it so people don't see that zones are bypassed or whatever when it's armed. And you set the number of zones on account 1. And now we're going to set up the zone code. So zone programming on this system is interesting. First off, you set the zone number. Here's where that letter comes into play. You set the location. So if I wanted the fire zone to be zone 1, I could set that and change the location here. And this 5-digit number determines how the zone operates. So right here in the manual, we have all the different zones, numbers. So the first digit determines its response on a command center. So this determines the zone general type. Priority zone is that designated zone feature. So that is kind of the zone type. So this zone is my glass break zone. So it's set to 1, which is an interior zone. The second digit is the response. For 24-hour zones, you use this table. For controlled zones, you use this table. So what this does is it shows how the panel will respond during certain conditions on the zone. So mine is also set to 1. So if the system is armed, either an open or short will cause an alarm immediately, not delayed. And if it's disarmed, you can set it so that open shows a trouble and short shows nothing because, you know, it's disarmed. But the idea of showing a trouble when disarmed is if you had certain sensors, like most door contacts will show open for a when the door is open, but they will never show a short. That you can set it so that if it does show a short and it's armed, it'll go into alarm because it assumes someone's probably tampering with it. But if it's disarmed and it's shorted, it'll show a trouble and you can contact the company for service because there's clearly something wrong with the zone. The third digit sets the alarm response. So here is the 1 ring override option to override the 1 ring restriction. Pulse option, so that you would set both those for a fire zone, whether or not you want the zone to activate the auxiliary relay and whether or not you want it to have a bell output. So here, the fourth zone is the reporting options. Mine is set to 5, and that is a standard reporting zone. So 5 checks both these 2 boxes, so it'll send reports and it will send restore reports. Swinger shutdown is it's another feature that prevents a zone from repeatedly sending an alarm. And designated zone is the designated zone feature, as I already mentioned. And the 5th digit sets the enunciation at the command center. So if it's an invisible zone, it does not show anything at the keypad. Sound bells until restoral. So until the zone restores, you can't silence it. And buzzer on fault makes the keypad beep continuously until the zone restores if you wanted that. And they give you a bunch of different recommended zone codes for different zone types, which is nice. And now that is, I think this is almost all. Account 2 is the same as account 1, but everything for account 2. Last option is the test timer. So in here, you set up all the options for the automatic test reports. So, oh my gosh, lighting. That first option is whether or not it sends test reports to the primary phone number. That's for alternate phone number. Is the interval in days? If it is, if it's set to yes, it's in days. If it's set to no, it's in hours. There's where you set the interval. Days until the first report and hours until the first report. That is used to set the number of hours or the number of days that the panel waits before sending the first test report after being programmed or completely reset. So a good use of that is all these panels will, if there's a large scale power outage and all these panels were off, completely off, like the battery's discharged for a while, when the power comes back, you don't want them all to send their test report 24 hours from that time that the power comes back. That's going to just slam the receiver with reports. So you would stagger them with that option. Test code, so 0, that sends an alarm zone 0 for a test report. So that was mainly used with non-Radionics receivers. TSE is test E, so that's the option for Radionics receivers. It sends a restoral zone E for the test report. And test deferred, so if you set that to yes, the system will not send test reports if another report has already been sent in that interval. So it's kind of a cost-saving feature for your phone bill, as well as reducing the amount of reports that come into a central station. And back to the top. So that is the entire panel program. To send the program, you just press send. And there we go. So now to reset the system, we're going to turn off the programmer. So we're going to go out of the menu and go to 5200 off. Now we can unplug the programmer from the panel. And you can either wait or you can reset it by touching that. And now the panel is going to reboot, and we're going to do Command 4 to silence the keypad tone. Okay. So I believe that just comes up because it's in a trouble condition when it starts up. Move that out of the way. So now I'm going to show it reporting to the alarm receiver. So first off, I'm going to cover diagnostic reports. The status, it's also known as status reports. If you remember my 8112 demonstration, which is the last video I made, I showed the status report function. And whenever you did a status report, it would show all the different conditions of the panel. And I said that some panels send them as diagnostic reports. This is one of the panels that does. If you're using modem 2, which we are, as the reporting format, it'll send it as a diagnostic report. So what we'll do is we will do Command 42, and I'll show you what that does. Picks up the phone line, and now I'll show you it reporting to the receiver. So I'm going to pick up the phone, hear the panel dial. It's going to skip the first handshake, because that's the modem 3 handshake. You notice the receiver said Diagnostic Zone 4. What the point of this option, entering Command 42 with the command center, is to assist in troubleshooting a panel remotely. So if you have a customer call into the central station saying that, hey, there's something wrong with my panel, it's beeping, you can have them enter Command 42 at the keypad, which sends all the off-normal, all the trouble reports that are currently active to the receiver. So you saw Diagnostic Zone 4. In the back of the program entry guide, there's a table. Move the programmer here. So if you look at the back of the manual here, there's this table. So you have two options. You can either look at the report at the central station. So a 4 is the RJ38X jack supervision. It actually supervises that there's a proper phone plug in there, and that's not the right kind of plug to go in that jack, so it's showing a trouble for that. It's an interesting feature these panels have. So you can either do that, or you can do Command 40 at the keypad. Now I don't think it'll actually display it. Yeah, it's not going to display it because it already was reported. This panel has a double event buffer, so it can store up to 2 trouble conditions that can be displayed using Command 40 or sent to the central station by doing Command 42. So since I already did that, it cleared it from the buffer and it won't display it, but otherwise it would show it as a combination of the first 4 zone lights being one of these trouble conditions. So Command 42 is a very useful feature. I've used it before when a technician is on site at work and they're troubleshooting a POP-X loop on some panel and you need to check which zones are still in a fault condition. You can have them do Command 42 at the keypad and it'll actually send all the off-normal conditions to the receiver, which is very, very useful. Instead of having to look back at a long log of reports, you can just do Command 42 and it'll show you what the actual trouble is. So yeah, it's just a really useful troubleshooting feature for central stations. Now I'm going to do Command 41, which is the test report option. You have to press Command or any key to exit the Command 40 menu. So Command 41 just tests the communication. Because I'm doing it manually, it's going to send an unexpanded restoral report. So that's the unexpanded restoral report. It does actually send a restoral zone E if you send the if you let it do its timer test, but I'm not going to wait 24 hours for that to happen. So that's a test report. And you also heard the keypad make a tone, which is the ring back feature, which a lot of systems have. So that was useful so that the customer could just do Command 41 any time that they want, and it'll give you an indication that yes, it did properly get through to the central station. On the 8112, it displays that as that little plus sign to the right of the event in the display. So that's those. Now if I arm the system, if I did Command 1, it would report as code number 9, or if you armed it remotely, but I'm going to enter my passcode and enter. That'll arm the panel. After the exit delay expires, we will show the report, and you'll see it'll show the actual combination ID. So remember, the combination ID is the first digit of the user code because of how these panels work. Closing ID 1, that indicates that the panel was armed by passcode number 1. Or rather, the first digit of the passcode is 1. Now, I believe the 8112 can actually do expanded reporting, but I just have to do, I have to upgrade its ROMs first. But yeah, modem 2 format. It's much faster than Pulse and a little bit faster than BFSK, but it does all sorts of neat features that shows expanded reporting at the receiver. And now if I disarm it, it would also send the combination ID, but you've all kind of seen that before. So apart from that, I think the only thing I haven't shown is an AC failure. So if I unplug it from AC power, see the AC power LED starts flashing fast. And I don't remember if it does something for battery trouble. I don't think it does. But now that it is on AC, it's actually reporting to the receiver, I believe. Yep, AC failure, and there's the opening report. So it actually sends the AC failure as a tag-along report. So that's interesting. And one other feature, I don't think I'm going to be able to demonstrate it because I'd have to wait for that test timer. But when the system does send its test report to the central station, it'll actually send the current armed status, whether or not the panel's armed. So that's a cool feature that they have. So if you ever look in a 6500 or a 6600 receiver, there's a programming option in there that's called like 4112 and 6112 armed status. So that actually displays the arming status of the panel at the test report time. Now, I don't know if it'll actually... No, it won't show that for a diagnostic report because that's already been sent. So, diagnostic report's mainly used for if you hadn't had the system actually reporting to the central station, you would use diagnostic reports to... Because I believe it actually will clear that trouble from the buffer as soon as it's reported. So, yeah. But Command 42 is also implemented on the new panels. So this is a 9412 over here. It's the 9412G. Much newer, much more complicated Radionics system. But you'll notice, if I do Command 42, it's going to send a status report, which is basically diagnostics, but meant to be able to work on multiple different panels. So listen to this. This reporting is much faster as well. Oh wait, I forgot, it's on a different line. You're not going to be able to hear it. But that reporting goes through much faster because it's using modem 3. And what you would have seen here is, if I log into the receiver, you can actually look at it. You will see the status report also reports the area, but status opening. So the newer panels using modem 3 format report a lot more expanded status. So if I had a faulted zone, it would show the zone name and all that. But it also shows the armed status of the area when you do a status report. So yeah, neat features that they have reporting to receivers using modem format. So that is the Radionics D6112 panel, an overview and how it's programmed, because I mainly wanted to show all its programming because not many collectors have Radionics panels because they're hard to get into. They've got to spend a lot of money to get programmers and get them unlocked and all that. So just wanted to show how they're programmed and all the different options they have. Again, this is a very simple Radionics system. It would take hours to explain all the options for a 9000 series panel. Radionics actually has training tapes that my friend's gonna digitize someday that goes through a lot of the programming on them, but maybe I'll show those eventually. But there's the 6112. And again, thank you to HappyJigg for sending some of these keypads. The D620 is the D636. It's so hard to get these keypads now that the 6112 and 4112 are almost impossible to actually get, because you can't do much with it without the keypad, and yeah, they're just getting rarer as we go, so glad to have one. But that's the 6112.